Before you fall asleep tonight, there is something printed inside your own body that may already be predicting how long you live, and almost nobody has ever told you to pay attention to it. It is not your cholesterol number. It is not your blood pressure. It is not your weight. It is 2 letters, maybe 3, that a nurse wrote on a form decades ago and you probably filed away and forgot. Your blood type. And what researchers have quietly uncovered in the last 10 years about what that type means for your heart, your brain, your risk of stroke, and the actual number of years you may have left, it is not what you think. Stay with me, because what comes in the next few minutes could genuinely change how you think about your own body for the rest of your life. I'm Dr. Christian O'Brien. I am a board-certified physician specializing in metabolic health and preventive medicine, and I have spent 15 years watching patients ignore this one piece of biological data while obsessing over numbers that matter far less. That pattern ends today. Now, I want you to picture someone for a moment. Maybe it is a person you know. Maybe, if you are honest with yourself, it is you. They are somewhere between 55 and 70 years old. They eat reasonably well. They get some exercise. They take their medications. They go to their annual checkups. On paper, they look fine, but something keeps nagging at them. A tiredness that sleep does not fix. A brain that feels slower than it used to. A family history that hangs over every doctor visit like a cloud they cannot outrun. They have done everything right, and they still feel like something is working against them. I see this person in my office every single week. And more often than not, when I dig deeper, the answer is written right there in their blood type. A clue sitting in plain sight that no one ever thought to explain. Here is where we need to start. Your blood type is not just a label for the hospital. It is a deeply biological characteristic that shapes how your immune system behaves, how your blood clots, how your gut absorbs nutrients, and how your cardiovascular system handles stress. Most people think blood type only matters when you need a transfusion. That thinking is decades out of date. Your blood is classified into 4 main groups, A, B, AB, and O, based on proteins called antigens that sit on the surface of your red blood cells. Think of these antigens like the ID badges your cells wear. Your immune system reads those badges constantly, and depending on which badge your cells are wearing, your body handles inflammation, clotting, and disease risk in fundamentally different ways. This is not fringe science. This is established human biology that most primary care conversations simply skip over because there are only 15 minutes in an appointment and too many other things to cover. And here is the part that should make you sit up straighter. A landmark review published in the journal Arteriosclerosis, Thrombosis, and Vascular Biology, a study that pooled data from over 400,000 individuals, found statistically significant differences in cardiovascular mortality rates across blood types. Not small differences, meaningful, clinically relevant differences. People with type O blood had measurably lower rates of heart disease and blood clots compared to those with type A, B, or AB. The researchers concluded that non-O blood types carried a 9% higher lifetime risk of coronary events. 9% sounds modest until you realize we are talking about heart attacks and strokes, the 2 leading killers of adults over 50 in North America. Now you are paying attention. But before you panic if you are not type O or celebrate too early if you are, I need you to hear the next part very carefully because this is where most videos on this topic get it completely wrong. Blood type is not destiny. It is a starting point. What matters is what you do with that starting point. Let me give you the full picture, because each blood type carries its own distinct profile of risks and advantages, and understanding yours specifically is where the real power lies. If you have type A blood, here's what the research says. A large-scale study from Harvard School of Public Health, tracking over 90,000 adults over a 20-year period, found that individuals with type A blood had a significantly elevated risk of developing type 2 diabetes compared to type O individuals. The risk was not trivial. It was roughly 10% higher, even after controlling for diet, weight, and physical activity. Researchers believe this is connected to the way type A antigens influence insulin receptor sensitivity, which is the ability of your cells to hear insulin's signal. Think of insulin like a doorbell ringing at the door of your cells. In type A individuals, that doorbell seems to ring a little quieter on average, which means the body often has to produce more insulin just to get the same response. Over decades, that extra workload on the pancreas adds up. But here is the flip side that never gets talked about. Type A individuals tend to have lower levels of a clotting factor called von Willebrand factor, which means they have a slightly lower baseline risk of the kind of deep vein blood clots that cause pulmonary embolisms. Every blood type has a shadow and a light. Knowing yours means you can work with both. If you have type B blood, the picture shifts again. Type B individuals appear to have a more complex relationship with gut microbiome composition. Researchers at the University of Toronto published findings suggesting that type B antigens may influence which bacterial populations thrive in the digestive tract. A healthy gut microbiome is not just about digestion. It is deeply tied to immune regulation, inflammation levels, and even mental health through the gut-brain axis. Think of your gut microbiome like a garden. The soil chemistry in a type B gut appears to favor a slightly different set of plants, and if you are feeding that garden the wrong things, the wrong plants take over fast. The practical implication is that type B individuals who eat diets high in processed foods seem to experience more pronounced inflammatory markers than type A or O individuals on the same diet. If you are watching this right now and you are type AB, I want you to pay close attention to what comes next, because the research on type AB and cognitive decline is something your doctor has almost certainly never mentioned to you. A study from the Memory and Aging Project at Rush University Medical Center, following over 500 older adults over several years, found that type AB individuals had a significantly elevated risk of cognitive decline and memory problems compared to every other blood type. The risk was not marginal. It was striking enough that the researchers specifically called for blood type to be considered as a variable in future dementia research. The mechanism is not fully understood, but it appears to be related to the way type AB blood influences clotting factor VIII, which affects microcirculation, the tiny blood vessels that feed your brain. Picture the blood supply to your brain like an irrigation system for a very delicate garden. Type AB individuals may have a system that is slightly more prone to small blockages in those fine capillary channels, and over a lifetime those small interruptions add up. Now, if you just heard that and felt a spike of fear, I want you to breathe for a second. Because this is exactly where I need to tell you what the research also shows about lifestyle factors in type AB individuals. Studies have consistently found that regular aerobic exercise, specifically the kind that elevates your heart rate for 20 to 30 minutes, 5 days a week, significantly reduces those microcirculation risks. Movement is the most powerful tool a type AB individual has, more powerful than any supplement, more powerful than most medications. This is also a good moment for me to say clearly, everything I am sharing with you today is meant to inform a conversation with your own physician, not replace one. Your doctor knows your full medical history. What I want to do is give you the questions to bring to that conversation. Now we come to type O. And if you are type O, you have probably already heard that you have the universal donor blood and assume that means you are biologically superior in some way. The reality is more nuanced. Type O individuals do have the lowest risk of cardiovascular disease and the lowest risk of several cancers, including pancreatic cancer. A meta-analysis published in the International Journal of Epidemiology found that type O individuals had a 37% lower risk of pancreatic cancer compared to non-O types. That is a remarkable protective effect. But type O blood is not a free pass. Type O individuals have higher levels of certain stomach acids and are significantly more vulnerable to H. pylori infection, the bacterial culprit behind most stomach ulcers. They also appear to be more susceptible to certain parasitic infections, though that is less relevant for most viewers in North America. More practically, type O individuals seem to be more sensitive to the negative effects of certain inflammatory foods, particularly refined grains and high-sugar diets, than other blood types. The protection type O gives you on the cardiovascular side can be quietly erased by a diet that keeps your gut chronically inflamed. Before I show you how all of this comes together in a real clinical story, I want to tell you about the third piece of your blood type that almost no one talks about. the Rh factor. That positive or negative after your A, B, or O. Because it turns out the Rh factor is not just a transfusion detail either. Stay with me, because this next part is something most doctors have never connected for their patients. And if you have been finding this valuable, I hope you will hit subscribe right now. I put out new videos every week on exactly this kind of information. Things that are evidence-based, clinically grounded, and actually useful to your daily life. 2 seconds, then we are right back. The Rh factor, your positive or negative, is determined by a protein on the surface of your red blood cells called the Rh antigen. Being Rh negative is relatively rare. Only about 15% of the general population falls into that category, and emerging research suggests that Rh negative individuals may have a subtly different immune response profile, one that appears to handle certain viral infections differently. A 2021 study from researchers in the Czech Republic, later referenced in a review in BMC Infectious Diseases, found that Rh negative individuals showed different susceptibility patterns to certain parasitic brain infections. The research is still evolving, but the principle it points to is important. Your Rh status is a living part of your immune identity, not just a footnote on a hospital form. What this means practically is that your complete blood type, your ABO group, and your Rh factor together creates a biological fingerprint that is worth knowing in full and worth discussing with your physician as a genuine health variable, not a curiosity. Now I want to tell you about Margaret. She came to see me at 61 years old after years of what she described as feeling like she was running on half a tank. She was type A positive, her cholesterol was borderline, her blood sugar was creeping upward. She had put on about 18 pounds over the previous 5 years despite not significantly changing her diet, and she had a family history of both diabetes and early cognitive decline on her mother's side. She was scared. She was frustrated. And she felt like she was doing everything her previous doctors had told her to do. When I looked at her full metabolic panel alongside her blood type profile, a picture emerged that made complete clinical sense. Her fasting insulin was elevated, which is consistent with what we know about type A and insulin sensitivity. Her inflammatory markers were high, and her diet, though healthy by conventional standards, was actually working against her type A biology in specific ways, particularly her high intake of certain lectins, which are proteins found in some grains and legumes that appear to interact differently with type A antigens in the gut lining. We made 3 targeted changes. We shifted her diet toward more lean proteins and vegetables with lower lectin content. We introduced a structured 30-minute daily walk 5 days a week, and we added a targeted omega-3 protocol after reviewing her lipid subfractions. Nothing dramatic, nothing extreme. 6 months later, Margaret's fasting insulin had dropped by 31%. Her inflammatory markers normalized. She lost 11 pounds without ever feeling like she was on a diet, and for the first time in years, she told me she felt like herself again. Her words, not mine. That is not a miracle. That is biology working with you instead of against you. And this is what I want you to take from Margaret's story. The information about your blood type is not a sentence handed down to you by genetics. It is a key that, once you have it, helps you understand why certain approaches to diet and exercise work brilliantly for one person and frustratingly poorly for another. It explains so much of the confusion people carry for decades. Now let me pull all of this together into what I actually want you to do with this information. The first thing is simply to know your full blood type, ABO and Rh. If you do not know it off the top of your head, call your doctor's office today. It is in your medical record. You have a right to that information. The second thing is to understand which risk profile is most relevant for your type and your family history, and to bring that context to your next physician visit. If you are type A, you want to know your fasting insulin level, not just your fasting glucose, because fasting insulin catches insulin resistance years before blood sugar becomes a problem. If you are type AB, you want to know your CIMT score, which is the carotid intima media thickness measurement, a simple ultrasound that assesses the early signs of arterial thickening and reduced brain circulation. If you are type B, you want to invest serious attention in your gut health and inflammatory markers. And if you are type O, do not let your naturally lower cardiovascular risk lull you into complacency about diet, because the H. pylori and gut inflammation risks are real and underappreciated. The third thing is to respect what the research keeps confirming across all blood types without exception. Aerobic movement is the single most powerful biological intervention available to every adult over 50, regardless of blood type. Not walking slowly through a parking lot. Real movement. Elevated heart rate, slightly labored breath, consistent frequency. The Nurses' Health Study at Harvard, which followed over 70,000 women over 2 decades, found that regular moderate-intensity exercise reduced all-cause mortality by 35%. Every blood type, every risk profile, movement is the great equalizer. The fourth thing, and this one matters more than most people realize, is sleep. Not rest, sleep. 7 to 9 hours of actual restorative sleep has been shown in multiple large cohort studies to reduce the expression of inflammatory genes that are directly tied to cardiovascular and cognitive risk. Think of sleep like the maintenance crew that comes in every night to repair the walls of your blood vessels and clear the debris from your brain cells. When you cut that crew's hours short, the damage accumulates. For type AB individuals in particular, given the microcirculation concerns we discussed, prioritizing sleep quality is not optional. It is protective medicine. And the fifth thing, the one that ties all of this together, is inflammation management through food. Not a specific named diet, not a protocol someone is selling. Simply this. The foods that chronically raise your body's inflammatory markers are the same foods that interact most negatively with whatever biological vulnerabilities your blood type carries. Processed sugar, refined seed oils, ultra-processed packaged foods, and excessive alcohol are not just broadly bad for human health. They are specifically bad because they amplify the exact risk pathways your blood type may already be leaning toward. Removing them is not deprivation, it is precision. Here is what I want you to walk away knowing today. Your blood type is a piece of biological information that has been sitting in your medical record your entire adult life, largely ignored in the context of preventive health. And the science, while still evolving, is now clear enough that dismissing it entirely is doing you a disservice. You are not a statistic. You are a specific human being with a specific biological profile. And the more you understand that profile, the more power you have to shape what comes next. You have not lost time if you are learning this at 55 or 65 or 70. The human body has a remarkable ability to respond to the right inputs at any age. The research on vascular regeneration, gut microbiome restoration, and even cognitive resilience in older adults is genuinely encouraging. The door is not closed. It is just waiting for you to push it. What I want you to do right now is share this video with one person in your life who needs to hear it. A spouse, a sibling, a friend who has been struggling with their health and cannot figure out why. Think of sharing this as an act of care. Because it is. You might be handing them a key they did not know existed. If you want to stay ahead of this kind of information, the science that actually matters for adults over 50, explained clearly and without the noise, subscribe to this channel. Every video I make is built around one principle. You deserve to understand your own body. And in the next video, I am going to be talking about something that connects directly to everything we covered today, specifically, how the foods that are most commonly recommended for heart health may actually be silently damaging one particular blood type at the cellular level. You will not want to miss that one. I'm Dr. Christian O'Brien, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourself.